Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. Deontay Wilder, the WBC champion, he's taken quite an interesting and, I believe, quite a pragmatic stance in relation to the WBC franchise designation, which he's all but said he does not want. He said he doesn't think it'd be a right fit for him. So what I want to do, I'll quickly run through the couple of quotes and then a few thoughts on this whole franchise champion issue, because I think, one, Wilder is falling on the right side of this issue with fans and is listening to fans. But two, if he had have picked it up, it could have sort of had some negative blowback for him. And I'm sure some of that would have sort of been taken into consideration with his stance on this issue. But also, does the franchise champion tag, does it actually work at heavyweight? So that's what I want to canvass in this video. So Wilder, talking to media for his media day, asked about the franchise champion tag, which I think many of us were expecting at some point in time he would get, especially if he beat Tyson Fury in February 2020, should they fight. But of the franchise champion tag, he effectively said, look, guys work their way up in the division. He wasn't interested. He wants, to see guys work their way up to number one, number two. And when you take certain things away from boxing, you take the charisma away, you take the excitement away. He said, I don't want to take the excitement away from anyone. I'm just listening to the fans. I'm listening to my heart. I don't think being a franchise champion would fit me. Deontay Wilder's statements. So making it very clear, not really interested in it, and he wants to be fighting mandatories. That was also clear from the statements that he made, that guys work their way up and he wants to fight them even if he makes them wait. And he did actually say that, often he has made them wait. And, that's part of when he gets them into the ring, they're feeling a certain way about the weight. And I'd note, because a lot of people have brought this up elsewhere, in the nearly 5 years that Wilder has been champion, he's had the two mandatory defences, one against Stavern in 2017, and then another against Dominic Breazeale in 2019. And if he beats Luis Ortiz, the WBC would like to make Tyson Fury his mandatory for February 2020. So that would be effectively over a 5-year stretch, 3 in 5 years. It's 2 at the moment. And I know some people have made jokes that, well, the WBC hasn't offered it, so how can he turn it down? But I think this is a good stance by Wilder here and a good line in the sand, because there's been a whole lot of talk about this whole franchise champion tag that Canelo Alvarez and now Lomachenko have been given. And it really hasn't sort of sat well with fans, because it does seem to be another avenue to effectively create another belt which can't be lost but can still be charged sanctioning fees. And those fighters that have it, Canelo and Lomachenko, can effectively go and do whatever they want, no mandatories, and there's no real consequence to a loss. And I guess you can make an argument, that a fighter could go up and down divisions and go for the best fights and, go for greatness, but a lot of fighters do that anyway, and we're seeing that regardless of a franchise belt being on the line. So the argument about fighters not getting an opportunity to actually fight the proper champion who gets elevated to the franchise state, that is, I think, what has really annoyed fans, because it makes undisputed impossible in a sense, especially for that person who has that franchise tag. But just in general, it just seems messy. You've got another champion. In the case of Lomachenko, he has been elevated, so Devin Haney steps in, and he is now considered the champion at lightweight. So it really is messy and murky. And even Mauricio Suleiman, in a couple of interviews when he's been quizzed, the WBC president, he hasn't sort of really known all the specifics, the ins and outs, which, and if you've seen some of those interviews, is somewhat embarrassing, because he said even he's confused about some of it. But it raises the question, why was it needed at all? And with the backlash towards the WBC over this issue, which clearly seems to be about money and giving a few cherry-picked fighters, the opportunity to do whatever they want but still be considered a champion even if they lost, that really does annoy fans. And hardcore boxing fans are kind of sick of some of the rubbish that we've been served up in recent years. And this is just another sort of what seems to be a cynical move to drive more money into the sanctioning body's pockets by having another champion, effectively another title that can be charged for, and giving someone else about elevating them to the full champion, so then they collect fees on that too. It's just a whole money go round, and I think it's pretty easy to see that's part of the reason for it. And the WBC can come out and try finesse its statements and the rationale and the reasoning for the franchise belt or champion, but it seems to be it's not washing with fans. And I'm pretty sure Deontay Wilder has seen this, the negativity towards the WBC, not only just over this issue, but other issues as well. And why, as a champion who is coming up in his career, becoming more popular than he's ever been, why would he want to invite criticism for a situation that, is not of his doing? So he's got ahead of this, said no, he doesn't want it. And I think that's quite a pragmatic stance. And I think a lot of people can it resonates in terms of you want someone to be able to work their way up in the division, get a mandatory, and eventually have a shot at the champion. And although Deontay Wilder's record in terms of fighting mandatories and even the circumstances about the mandatories that he has fought getting to mandatory, what he was saying does hold true, that, I think there is a path, and if you take that away, it sort of can take some of the motivation away for fighters because they may not feel they're going to be fighting the real champion. That's the broader issue with this whole franchise champion thing. And I think he's wise to get away from the WBC in terms of, potential criticism, because let's face it, if Deontay Wilder picked it up, what would happen is he would be pillared by a section of fans, rightly so to some extent, I believe. And what would also be said is that he is going back to his cherry-picking ways, because up until 2018, huge amounts of criticism towards Wilder, the way that he'd been built up, a very carefully matched career, even at championship level, fought overmatched opponents, even at championship level, and people weren't really liking the resume in terms of the slow burn, in terms of the fights that he'd had until he was a champion, and then the sort of stuff that he faced when he was champion, the likes of Eric Molina, Artis Bilka, Gerald Washington, Chris Arreola. He wasn't exactly facing the best opposition. But since he stepped it up since 2018 with Luis Ortiz, Tyson Fury, for example, the cherry-picking tag has been sort of shedding from Deontay Wilder. But if he stepped back to be a franchise champion, it would come right back to him. And it could ultimately sort of have an impact on his legacy, because if he wasn't facing mandatories or potentially wasn't facing the best in the division as it was seen by fans, then obviously that would be a problem for his legacy in the way that he's perceived. And he's been trying to shake some cherry picker sort of tag type stuff in recent years, and he wouldn't want that to come back. Why would you? But also, the other question that I wanted to just sort of pose to you is, does it really work at heavyweight? Because I think you can make a case with the likes of Lomachenko and Canelo. They've actively been moving up and down in weight, etc., for big fights, titles, etc. But at heavyweight, it doesn't really work. And for Deontay Wilder, his most recent fight, 220 pounds there or thereabouts, and if he goes up 5 or 10 pounds, down 5 or 10 pounds, he's still at heavyweight. So the argument is, I think, for the other champions, it works better for them because it gives them more leeway to move through the different weight classes. Whereas for a heavyweight like Deontay Wilder, is it actually much of a fit? Is it actually very beneficial? And a lot of the fights that we'd like to see would probably get made without the franchise tag anyway. Well, you would hope. It doesn't always happen that way in the heavyweight division, but I think removing the obligation of mandatories, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get any better fights. So I think Wilder has been quite smart and savvy here by getting ahead of this, cutting it off, and effectively saying, it's not a good fit. I'm listening to my heart, listening to fans. And I think for fans in general will think he's made the right call. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.